Bill Maher thought he could slip in a quick jab and move on, but Jasmine Crockett's calm, cutting reply flipped the mood of the room and the internet. Backstage at CBS Television City in Los Angeles, the dressing room felt cold. Not in temperature, but in spirit. So polished it seemed to forget real people had to sit there. Jasmine Crockett sat quietly, elbows resting on the chair, phone dim in her hand. A young assistant had just reminded her she had 10 minutes before stepping onto reel. Time with Bill Maher. She took a steady breath, not out of nerves. This wasn't her first time on national TV, but something felt different. 2 days earlier, her communications director had warned her. The invitation sounded loaded. "They're calling it a discussion on polarization and civility," he had said. "But if Maher takes it where I think he will, they'll try to bait you. Be ready." Jasmine didn't answer right away. She'd been on plenty of panels where handshakes ended in smirks. What was new was the silence. No one asked if she needed water. No one introduced her to the other guest. From the hall came muffled laughter that stopped as soon as she entered the green room. Her assistant Reese leaned in. 2 minutes. Jasmine stood, smoothed her powder blue blazer, and faced the mirror. No cracks, no room for them, not tonight. As she walked to the set, she passed the wall of black and white portraits. Men in suits, men with opinions, men who never had to worry about being called angry for speaking their mind on TV. On stage, she gave Maher a polite smile. He nodded faintly, gesturing toward her seat like he was in on a joke only he understood. The lights came up, the applause sign flashed, the theme music hit. And just like that, they were live. Maher leaned in, half grinning. Our next guest. Bill Maher introduced her as a rising Democratic congresswoman from Texas. Young, sharp, maybe even the future of the party, if emotion didn't get in the way. The audience let out a small laugh. Jasmine tilted her head, not confused, but calculating. She crossed her legs, hands folded neatly. Good to be here, she said evenly. Maher gave a thin smile. Let's start simple. Why do so many progressives feel the need to moralize everything? She didn't rush to answer. Instead, she blinked slowly, as if she had been waiting for this moment. Her voice was light, steady. Moralizing, huh? I think you mean standing up for people who usually don't get heard, Maher smirked. Sure, but don't you think passion gets in the way of governing? Lots of yelling, not much getting done. Feels like people want to go viral more than they want results. A few awkward chuckles rippled through the crowd. Jasmine didn't smile. I get it. Young people, especially young women, especially young black women, get called emotional when we care, or angry when we speak directly. Meanwhile, someone else can curse on air, lose their temper, and it's called passion. Funny, isn't it? Maher shifted in his seat. You're making this about identity. I'm talking about approach. People want solutions, not lectures. And I'm telling you, Jasmine replied, leaning in slightly, you can't separate identity from approach. If someone spends their life watching their community be ignored, underfunded, and blamed for problems they didn't create, what do you expect them to sound like when they finally get the mic? Soft? The tension thickened. The room fell silent, not uneasy, but expectant. Maher raised an eyebrow. But isn't that the problem? The mic becomes a weapon. Every moment's a clapback. Congress feels more like a stage now. Jasmine let out a small laugh, not from amusement, but because the line was too easy. You know what's wild? She said. It's always been a stage. You just never noticed. When the same people were writing every act, no one called it performative. But now that someone new is reading the script, suddenly it is. Soft whoa came from the crowd. Heads began to nod. The camera lingered on Maher's face as he reached for his water. Okay, he said, let's take emotion out of it. Policy-wise, what's actually being done? That depends, Jasmine replied. Do you mean what's being proposed, or what's being blocked? He tilted his head. Explain. She did. Take voting rights. I helped draft legislation that would make it easier for working people to vote. more polling places, stronger. Mail-in options, protections for people with disabilities. That's not emotional, that's structural. But every time we bring it up, someone says we're overreaching. So I have to ask, who's really holding progress back? Maher shrugged. Maybe it's just not that simple. No, Jasmine said firmly. It is that simple. The only thing complicated is trying to defend systems that work for a few while pretending they work for everyone, the audience murmured. This wasn't the usual back and forth with punchlines and easy laughs. It was sharper, heavier, and only one of them looked at ease. Maher crossed his leg, forcing a smile. Sounds like a good soundbite. Maybe, Jasmine said calmly. Or maybe it just sounds different because I didn't need to raise my voice to make the point. But Maher wasn't finished, and Jasmine knew it. What came next wasn't a question. It was a strike. He leaned back, his smile fading into something colder. Fingers tapped the armrest once, then again. Well, he said slowly, you talk a lot about how hard it is for women like you. But isn't part of leadership being able to take criticism without calling it oppression? The line landed heavy. The moment didn't hit because it was loud or clever, but because it carried that smug undertone, the kind that says, you're not allowed to call this what it is. Jasmine didn't answer right away. She looked at him. Really looked. Not like a sparring partner, but like a man asking a question he already thought he had answered. Then she turned slightly toward the audience. No grand gesture, no smile, no raised voice. Her tone shifted. Slower, sharper. Let me ask you something, she said quietly. If I explain how certain systems push people to the margins, and your first instinct is to say I'm playing the victim, what does that say about how you listen? Silence. Real silence. No coughs, no whispers, no chuckles. She went on. I'm not oppressed because someone disagrees with me. I'm pointing out a pattern. And the moment I name that pattern, suddenly, the conversation shifts to whether I'm being too sensitive, not whether the pattern exists. That's not debate. That's deflection. The camera cut to Maher. His expression slipped. Not much, just a flicker. But enough. That split second where someone realizes they may not control the narrative after all. Jasmine didn't flinch. And let's be real, she continued. You've built a career on saying the uncomfortable thing, on pushing back against the mainstream. But when a black woman does the same thing, when she challenges you directly, you don't call it brave. You call it emotional. A single clap rang out from the audience. Then another. Then half the room. Maher lifted his hand, smirking weakly. All right, let's keep it civil. Jasmine turned back, calm as ever. I am being civil, she said. I'm just not being small. The line cut the air. No fire, no theatrics, just truth. The years packed into that one sentence, the restraint, the precision. It wasn't just a rebuttal. It was a correction, a boundary drawn in real time. Even Maher stalled for a beat. He leaned back, exhaling half scoff, half surrender. He reached for his notes, hands moving a touch too fast, like his rhythm had slipped. And the audience noticed. Not because they had chosen sides, but because, for once, the story unfolding wasn't wrapped in sarcasm or spectacle. It was two worlds colliding, and the quieter one was winning. Jasmine didn't push. She didn't have to. She sat back, smoothed her blazer, and waited. But the real shift wasn't in what she said. It was in what happened next. The show had barely ended before the world started buzzing. The credits were still rolling when Reese rushed into the dressing room, eyes wide, Jasmine's phone in hand. You're trending. Jasmine arched a brow as she unpinned her mic. Already? Number 2 on X, and climbing. She took the phone. Mentions poured in, screenshots, clips, 15-second loops of one line. I'm not being small. It was already everywhere. Edited into GIFs, set to dramatic music, captioned in bold white text. Say that again. She let out a slow breath. "They're going to twist it." "They already are," Reese said. "But look at the comments. People love it. And it's not just political Twitter. It's everyone." No producers came to say goodbye. No handshake, no thanks. Just an assistant poking in with a quick, "You're clear," before disappearing. Jasmine didn't mind. She wasn't looking for a debrief. On the ride back to the hotel, her inbox filled with messages. Staffers, journalists, friends from Dallas. Some were proud, some stunned, some just wrote, "Damn." Her mother texted, "You were raised right. That man thought he had you figured out. He didn't." But the praise wasn't the only thing spreading. By the time she reached the hotel elevator, a headline was already live. Congresswoman Crockett lashes out at Bill Maher in on-air clash. Jasmine stared at the words, shook her head, and handed the phone back to Reese. "Lashes out," she muttered. "Every time a woman sets a boundary, it's violence." Reese said nothing. He just pressed the elevator button, eyes down. Upstairs, Jasmine slipped off her heels. The quiet of the room felt heavy, familiar. She turned on the muted TV. Her own face filled the screen. A panel debated whether she went too far. One talking. Head said, "This is why Democrats struggle. They alienate people with this tone." Another pushed back. She never raised her voice. She was surgical. Jasmine didn't linger. She sat down. Jasmine rubbed the arch of her foot and reached for the remote. Just as she was about to turn the TV off, her phone buzzed. An unknown number, Washington, D.C. area code. She let it ring twice before answering. "This is Jasmine." A calm, measured voice replied, "Congresswoman Crockett, this is Ed Ramos from CNN. We'd love to have you on tomorrow morning to follow up on your appearance tonight." She paused. "I'll have my team get back to you. Thanks." After she hung up, Reese asked quietly, "You want me to say no?" Jasmine leaned back, eyes on the dark city outside. "Tell them we'll think about it." It wasn't hesitation. It was honesty. She didn't need to rush into another microphone, another headline, another panel waiting to twist her words. She wasn't avoiding the moment. She just refused to be one. She wasn't chasing attention. She was building something larger. Online, her words were already spreading. Not through hashtags or slogans, but through something more personal. People shared stories of workplaces where they'd been told to smile more, speak less, not take things so personally. Parents wrote about raising daughters to speak without apology. One post caught her eye. A selfie of a high school girl in Columbus, Ohio, holding up a sticky note with Jasmine's words scrawled in Sharpie. "I'm not being small," but the wave building around her didn't stop at applause. By morning, the backlash hit, louder than ever. By 7 a.m., headlines multiplied. Clap back. Fiery exchange. Congresswoman torches Maher. The digital sensationalism was predictable. Still, beneath the noise was something harder to dismiss. Cable. News panels debated it. Morning radio weighed in. Podcasts rushed out emergency episodes. Some praised her as brave. Others called her divisive. A conservative host sneered that she was an activist in a suit, as if that were an insult. Back in Dallas, Jasmine sat at her kitchen counter, reheated coffee filling the air, while the news droned in the background. She hadn't slept much. Not from nerves, but from certainty. She knew exactly what the next 48 hours would bring. Across from her, Reese sat hunched over his laptop. "At least 20 new interview requests already," he said. "NPR, MSNBC, some independents. Even that guy from The Viewpoint wants you," Reese said. "Skip him," Jasmine replied. "Already did." She glanced out the window. The sun was just beginning to push through the clouds, soft light spilling across rooftops. The neighborhood was still, truly quiet. "Do they want to talk policy?" she asked. Reese hesitated. "Mostly they want a reaction." "Of course they do," she muttered. It wasn't that Jasmine didn't understand how media worked. She did, maybe too well. What bothered her was how a single moment, born out of interruptions, deflections, and subtle dismissals, was now reduced to a viral clip. That afternoon, a man from the Capitol called her office. He praised her spirit, but warned the press wouldn't treat moments like this kindly. Translation: you made them uncomfortable. Don't do it again. But Jasmine wasn't flinching. She had known the risks before stepping into that studio. What she hadn't expected was the reaction from her own colleagues. An older congressman, someone she once respected, tweeted about decorum and unity. He didn't name her, but everyone knew. Pundits called for restraint on both sides, as if speaking plainly was equal to being dismissive on national TV. Jasmine didn't fire back. No quote tweets. No Instagram lives. Instead, she stayed quiet, on purpose. She met with her staff, made calls to grassroots leaders she trusted, and spoke to a group of high schoolers in Garland over Zoom. One girl told her, "I felt seen." Jasmine thanked her. That moment mattered more than any headline. No, one wrote about the restraint it took. Not shouting, not cutting someone off, staying measured while still pushing back. People didn't see that sometimes. Not reacting takes more strength than going off. Still, it gnawed at her how quickly the moment had been flattened into a meme, a savage comeback, instead of what it really was, an act of self-respect. That evening, alone at her desk, Jasmine shut her laptop on a pile of emails and statements. She opened her worn leather journal and wrote 5 words. Not loud, just clear enough. Then she closed the book. She wasn't chasing cameras. She wasn't seeking applause. But she also wasn't about to sit quietly while someone else decided how she should show up. The weight of that choice, the lines she had drawn, didn't disappear when the hashtags faded. A week passed. The internet had already moved on. A celebrity divorce, a leaked video, another political scandal out of Ohio. Jasmine's clip still floated around, shared now and then with captions like, "This is how you do it." But the noise had thinned. She didn't mind. She wasn't chasing noise. What stayed with her were the conversations that followed. Quiet, real ones. Like the woman in her district, mid-50s, working admin at a public school, who pulled Jasmine aside at a Mesquite town hall. She whispered, "I've sat in meetings where men spoke over me for years. You said the thing I never could." She smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. "I just wish I'd said it sooner." Or the retired pastor from Longview, who left a voicemail. "I didn't agree with you, but I respected how you carried yourself. That's how grown folks should talk. Keep speaking plain." Those moments grounded Jasmine more than any headline ever could. They reminded her why that stage mattered. It wasn't about clapping back. It wasn't about winning an argument. It was about setting a standard. There's a weight to being in her position, not just as a politician, but as a Black woman in rooms where decisions are made before she speaks and judged harder after. People love to say, "Just focus on policy." But when your very identity is treated as a distraction, neutrality isn't a luxury you can afford. She thought about that as she met with interns from smaller Texas colleges. They sat around a long table, notebooks open, eyes wide. A young man from Lubbock asked, "How do you decide when to speak up and when to stay quiet?" Jasmine leaned back in her chair. "You don't wait for the moment to feel safe," she said. "You speak when the silence feels heavier than the risk." The intern scribbled that down. Another asked, "How do you not get angry when people talk down to you?" Jasmine smiled. "I do get angry, but I've learned anger doesn't have to be loud to be real. Power doesn't always need volume." That wasn't theory. It was lived experience. It came from rooms where her tone was picked apart more than her ideas. From moments when she wanted to explode, but didn't. Not out of fear, but because she knew the impact of stillness. After the meeting, one intern lingered, a young woman with nervous hands. "I want to run for office one day," she said, softly. But I don't think people will take me seriously. I talk fast. I get emotional. People say I care too much. Jasmine looked at her, steady and kind. Keep caring, she said. That's the part they're scared of. The girl smiled, scribbled something in her notebook, and walked out. Jasmine stayed by the window, watching cars crawl below. Out there, everything felt noisy. But here, in this moment, it was clear. Her words on Maher's show had traveled far. But what mattered was where they landed. That line, "I'm not being small," was never meant just for a viral clip. It was a reminder that strength isn't always loud, that clarity has weight, that refusing to shrink is its own kind of power. But the story wasn't finished, not until the people watching understood what it meant for them, because there's a silence that lingers after a public moment. It isn't peace, it isn't stillness. It's the silence that asks, what now? For Jasmine, the question didn't bring panic. It brought responsibility. Because most people will never sit across from a TV host with millions watching. They won't be quoted, misquoted, or turned into a hashtag. But they will find themselves in rooms where they're spoken over. In jobs where their competence is doubted the moment they speak. In conversations where someone smiles. That's where this story lives now. Not in the clip, but in the reflection it sparked. A young teacher in Tulsa sent Jasmine a handwritten letter. She said she'd played the clip in her classroom, not for the politics, but for the posture. We talk a lot about bullying, she wrote, but we rarely teach what it looks like to stand up for yourself without striking back. A man in his 60s from rural Oregon wrote too. I don't agree with you on much, he admitted, but I saw how calm you were. I've never seen someone take a hit and respond without throwing one back. That stuck with me. That became the legacy of the moment. It wasn't that Jasmine Crockett won a debate. It was that she gave people something they didn't realize they needed. Permission. Permission to be firm without being cruel. To take up space without apologizing. To correct without retaliating. In a culture obsessed with clapbacks and takedowns, that kind of presence is rare and powerful. The deeper message was clear. You don't have to yell to be heard. You don't have to shrink to be accepted. And you don't owe anyone a softer version of yourself just to make them comfortable. When Jasmine walked into that studio, she wasn't chasing a viral moment. She came to talk policy. But what she left with was louder than any headline. A blueprint for every woman told she's too much. For every young person told they're not realistic. For every black voice told to calm down when all they did was speak clearly. The reminder is simple. You don't need permission to be whole. You don't need applause to be right. And you don't need to change your tone to belong in the room. So if you're watching this wondering how it connects to you, ask yourself, where have you made yourself smaller just to survive a room? Where have you backed down? Not because you were wrong, but because you feared the label. And more importantly, what would happen if you stopped? What would happen if the next time someone tried to measure your worth by your delivery, you looked them in the eye and said, I'm not being small? Because the moment you do, everything shifts, and people will feel it. Some will respect it, some will resent it, but none of them will forget it, and neither will you. If this story meant something to you, share it. Send it to someone who needs the reminder. Say the words out loud if you have to. And subscribe, because here we tell stories that don't just inform, but reflect something real, something lived. The kind of truth you don't need to shout to believe in. Your voice matters, exactly as it is.